Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. So, did you check the homework that was given to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did did you do that question?
No, not yet.
No. Okay. Acha. Did you say yes or no?
No, I was gonna do it later.
Acha. Acha. Okay. So, let's do the question now. So, in a city, the weekly observations made in a study on the cost of living index are given in the following table. So, cost of living index. I'm just gonna write cost. Okay. And fine. Cost. Number of weeks, 140 to 150. Now, since we are going to be making a histogram, I'm going to leave one more. Sorry, we're going to be making a frequency polygon. I'm going to leave just one column over here. 150 to 160, and 160 to 170, 170 to 180, 180 to 190, and 190 to 200. That was the question. And the number of weeks, which is basically this is called your frequency. Okay. This is 5, 10, 20, 962. Okay. Now imagine if you were asked to make first a histogram. Okay. If you were asked to make a histogram, what would it look like? So first let's try to make a histogram so that we can understand the relation between a frequency polygon and a histogram. Okay. So since this is continuous, as you can see, continuous class intervals are continuous. This one is ending on 150 and this one is starting on 150, and the same is for each of them. It is continuous, right? So we have to check two things when we are going to make a histogram. We have to check for two things. Number one, is it continuous or not? If it's not continuous, like we did in one of the previous questions, where was it? Yeah. Okay, question number 7 of the last exercise. It was 0. It was 1 to 7, then 7 to 13. Okay, so if it's not continuous, you have to make it continuous. Then look at the class width. Over here it is 10, right? Here it is also 10. Again, here it is 10. If the class width is not the same, then you know what to do. We have done it in the previous class. If the class width is not the same, we will make another column for class width, and then we will write length of rectangle, and that is what we will plot on the graph. Okay, instead of the frequency. So we have to make sure that the class width is equal or uniform class width. It's called uniform class width. So in this, both of these are being satisfied, so we don't have to change anything because we're going to make a histogram. All right, now let's get started. So it says 140 to 150, right? So let's say this is 140, 150, 160, 170, 180, 190, and then 200. Okay, now since not, this is like the distance between any two of them is 10, but we are starting from 0, right? So we will just write this 0 and we will make this jagged line. Okay, and on the y-axis here, we can start, because the maximum is 20, we can start, we can make it like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Okay, so 140 to 150. From 140 to 150, it is 5. Yeah. So from 140 to 150, we have to mark 5 here. So from 140 to 150, because this is what our histogram means. This is not a bar graph. So it will be, remember, histogram, the bars or the rectangles will be between these two markings. Whereas when we were doing bar graph, let me just show you. Where did our bar graph go? Yeah. Whereas for our bar graph, the rectangle was not between two markings, but each marking had its own separate rectangle. Okay. That is the difference between, one of the differences between histogram and bar graph. So this is 5. Then 150 to 160, it is 10. And this is going to be continuous, and this is exactly why we want to make sure it is a continuous class interval, because these rectangles have to be continuous. There's no gap between these rectangles. 160 to 70, 20. Then 170 to 189, 9 it's here. Oops. 180 to 196. Then the last one is 2. This is the histogram. If you were asked to make a histogram, this is what you would make. Okay. But in the question, it's asking you for frequency polygon. So the reason I made a histogram first is to show you the relationship between histogram and frequency polygon. So now what we're going to do is, if you remember, when we were making frequency polygon, we used to make the class mark. Okay. Class mark is what lies exactly between these two things. So what lies exactly between 140 and 150? 145, right? So class mark. It's going to be 145 here, 155, 165. And I even told you the formula for class mark. Here we're not applying the formula because it's obvious in front of our eyes that 140 to 150 ke beech mein there's 145 only. But in case if you have some complicated numbers like this one, yeah. So we have class mark ka formula, which is upper limit upper limit plus lower limit divided by 2. Basically the average of the upper limit and lower limit. Okay. Oh, all right. So frequency polygon 145, 165, 175, 185, 195. So 145 is going to be here, right? 145. I have to write it very small. 155, 165, 175, 185, 195. Now see, 145 marked at 5. 155 marked at 10. 165 marked at 20. 175 marked at 9. 185 is marked at... Someone is unmuted. Please mute yourself. 185 is marked at 6. And the last one at 2. So you see, this is what we had done. In the previous questions, we had not made the respective histograms, right? We had just made the frequency polygon. But if you want to see the relationship between frequency polygon and its respective histogram, this is where the frequency polygon comes from. Okay, it is basically the midpoint of each of the rectangles in your histogram. Right. So now we're going to join these. Array. Acha. Now, as we discussed, this is not a polygon. The pink one, it's not a polygon because we know that the polygon is supposed to be a closed figure. So 135. What did we discuss? That we are going to go one step backward and one step forward. So 135 over here and 205 over here. So we are going to just join it over here. Because what is this saying? When I am plotting 135 comma 0, the point over here that I have plotted is 135 comma 0, which means that for the cost of living index 135, the frequency is 0. Yeah, which is true according to the table. Then I left, yeah, we join it like this. This is the frequency polygon and its corresponding histogram. Okay, now let's do some questions. Please note this down quickly. Oh yeah, I haven't written the x-axis and y-axis stuff. You can write that on your own. Cost of living index, number of weeks. Okay, let me just write it. Please note it down. Done. Let's do some questions. Done. Hmm. Yes, Munir, Zain, Abdul Jabbar, Riyaz. Done. Yes or no? All right, let's do this question. So, a particular table has been given. Marks and number of students. 0 to 20 marks, there are 10 students. 20 to 40 marks, there are 15 students. 40 to 60 marks, there are 20 students. 60 to 100 marks, there are 25 students. Corresponding to this, they have drawn a graph and they're asking you to find to tell whether the graph that they've drawn is actually correct or not. And you guys have to tell me whether it is correct or not, and if not, then why not. So 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. I'm sorry, why? X. This is the number of students, and this is the marks. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100 marks. So 0 to 20, they have marked it at 10. 20 to 40, they have marked it at 15. Then 40 to 60, they have marked it at 20. Then 60 to 100, they have marked it at 25. Now, is this a correct representation of the given data? The given data is this one. Is this a correct representation? Is this how we're supposed to do it, or is there something wrong with it? Hmm. Abdul Jabbar, Zen, Zen, please unmute. Is this a correct or incorrect? Say something. No. If you say anything, either correct or incorrect. There are only two options over here. Is this correct or not? Zen, Munir, Abdul Jabbar, Riaz. Is this correct or incorrect? We have studied histogram. This is not something new that I'm asking that you're also blank. You're supposed to respond something, anything, even if you give the wrong answer. It's okay to give the wrong answer, but it's not okay to keep quiet when the teacher is asking something. Okay, we will not continue until and unless someone speaks up.
Mom, it's not correct.
Okay, it's not correct. Why? Any idea?
Mom, because of the zero, it's not placed in the correct place.
Okay, that's a good try. Okay, so it's a good try, but the actual reason is, See, 0 is in the correct place. Why? Because, see, 0 to 20, there's a difference of 20. Here, there's a difference of 20. Here, there's a difference of 20. So, there's a difference of 20. In each of these markings, there's a difference of 20. So, that's not a problem. And it says over here in the marks that 0 to 20, the number of students is 10. So, that's what we have done. So, that's not an issue. The main issue is, note that over here, the class width is 20. Here, the class width is also 20. Here, also it is 20. But here, the class width is 40. So what did we just discuss? That when the class width is uneven, we have to make it even. We have to do something about it, right? We can't just plot the graph like this. So let's see how we would do it. Remember when the class width was disuniform, or it was not uniform, non-uniform class width, then this is what we used to do. We used to write length of rectangle. We used to find that out. And the formula was this one: frequency by class width into minimum class width. So let's do that. Let's see what is going to be the correct way of solving this. So marks, class width, frequency, and length of rectangle. So okay, the first one is 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and then 60 to 100. Class width here is 20, 20, 20. Here it is 40. Minimum class width. Remember, what did we discuss? That we had to, even in this one, we had to identify what is the minimum class width out of all of these. So that one we will identify. The minimum here is this 20. Frequency, we will just copy it down as it is. Now length of the rectangle was, let's write it down. Length of rectangle is equal to frequency by class width into minimum class width. I'm just going to write CW. Okay. So length of rectangle in the first case, class width, sorry, frequency 10 by class width 20 into minimum class width, which also happens to be 20. So this is equal to 10. Then here this will be 15 by 20 into 20, which is 15. Here 20 by 20 into 20, which is 20. Now this one is going to be a little different. 25 by class width, which is 40, into minimum class width, which is 20 in this case. So this one is going to be 25 by 2, which is 12.5. Okay. Just take a look at this question. Uh, Turn the pages of your notebook, flip the pages of your notebook, look at the previous question, last question of the previous class. The last question of the previous class, right? We had found the length of the rectangle. Now we have to plot this on the graph. Okay. Now let's make the graph. The marks, they will again go on the x-axis. And on the y-axis, we will say number of students, because this was the frequency was actually number of students, right? The frequency was what? Number of students. Number of students. So number of students per 20 marks interval, because the smallest, the minimum class width was 20 marks interval. So we will, the one which we took as the minimum class width, that we will write over here. So let me write it like this: number of students per 20 marks interval. This is your y-axis. And now here on the y-axis, we are going to plot this stuff, not the frequency. We will plot this one, the you can say the modified frequency. Okay, so we can take it like the minimum is 10, the minimum is 12.5, and the maximum is, right? So we can take it like 5, 10, 15, 20, or yeah, 5, 10, 15, 20, and this is 0. And now your marks are going to be 20, 40, 60. The same thing which we had done in the previous one. The x-axis will be the same, only the y-axis will change, okay? 80 and 100. Now, 0 to 20. From 0 to 20, we have to mark 10. So 0 to 20, we have to mark it at 10. The same thing as before. The only difference is going to come in the last rectangle, okay? 20 to 40, 15. Oops. Then 40 to 60, 20. Now, here is the part where it's supposed to be different. 60 to 100, it will be 12.5. So 12.5 lies exactly between 10 and 15. So it will be this one till 100. So now this is what our histogram is supposed to look like, not this one. Okay. Is this concept clear to everyone? Okay. X. Chalo, we'll do one more question. Okay. Okay. Please note down this question. Following is the frequency distribution of total marks obtained by students of different sections of a particular class. Okay. So we have. Acha, 1 minute. Okay. Marks, number of students, which is basically the frequency. Okay. This is what is known as the frequency. So please note this down. 100 to 150, 150 to 200, 200 to 300, 300 to 500, and 500 to 800. Then frequency 60, 100, 100, 80 and 180. All right. We have to draw a histogram for this distribution. Now, the first thing we will see is whether it is continuous or discontinuous. As you can see, it is continuous. Yeah. So we don't have to change anything about that. But one difference is that this is non-uniform class width. Like over here, the class width is 50. Here also it is 50, but here it is 100. Here it is 200 and here it is 300. So the class width is different. Class width 50, 50, 100, 200, and 300. Now, because the class width are all different, we need to find the length of the rectangle. So length of the rectangle is frequency by class width into minimum class width. What is the minimum class width? Here the minimum class width is 50. So this one will be 60 itself. This one will also be 60. I'm sorry, 100. Because 60 by 50 into 50. So 60 at the end of the day. This one will be 100 by 100 into minimum class width, which is 50. So that is why it will change. It will become 50. This one's going to be 80 frequency by class width into minimum class width. So that's 20. And this one is 180 by 300 into minimum class width, which is 50, which is 30. Now we make the table. It's going to be a pretty long table because it starts all the way from 100 and goes to 800. Hmm. Okay. And the minimum is 20 and the maximum is 100. Okay. So let's start at 100 and we have to make a jagged line because each unit is at a distance of 50, but we are starting at 0 and we are straight away we are writing 100. So we have to make a jagged line. 200, 250, 300, 350, 400, 450, 500, 550, 600, 700, and 800. Okay. All right. So 100 to 150. Oh, first of all, we have to mark this. 20, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100. Okay. So 100 to 150. The first one is 100 to 150, 60. You have to mark it at 60. Start from here. This is 100 and this is 150, right? So here, this is our rectangle. Second one, 150 to 200, 100. Mark it at 200. Then 200 to 300, it is 50. Now 200 to 300, this entire portion, it is 50. 300 to 520. So 300 to 500 means all the way till here. Then 500 to 800, all the way till here, it is 30. Okay. So this is what our histogram will look like. Please note it down. Oops. Done. Shall we move on to the next question? All right. So, I'm trying to find some MCQs that we can have on this topic. Okay. Okay. So here's the question. For drawing a frequency polygon of a continuous frequency distribution, we plot the points whose ordinates are the frequencies of the respective classes, and abscissae, mean plural of abscissa, okay, are respectively what? The options are upper limits of the classes, lower limits of the classes, class marks of the classes, or upper limits of the preceding classes. Yes. Which one will it be? Preceding matlab previous, the previous class. What does this question mean? The question is saying for drawing a frequency polygon of a continuous frequency distribution, we plot the points whose ordinates so for example, let me just show you this one. Okay, the points whose ordinates, look this point. Okay, ordinate, abscissa and ordinate, right? Abscissa is the x coordinate, ordinate is the y coordinate. So they're telling you that the ordinate is the frequency of the respective class, right? This point, the frequency of the respective class. Like you saw over here, the frequency was 5 for the first point. So we plotted 5. So the ordinate is the frequency of the respective class. But what is the abscissa? What is the x coordinate of this? Is it the upper limit of this class? Is it the lower limit of this class? Is it the upper limit of the preceding class? Or is it the class mark? What is it? The abscissa, the x coordinate. X coordinate, as you can see, this point corresponds to 145, right? So 145 is what? 145 is the class mark, right? So the answer is going to be this one, C, class mark of the respective classes. Hmm. Okay, so that's it for the chapter. Are there any doubts you guys have?